"Pay the rent or get out," my daughter-in-law shouted across the Christmas table, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Forks froze. A child's toy rolled off the chair. Even my own son stayed silent like I wasn't his father at all. I held the deed folder I once gave them, the house I built with my hands. She had never dared raise her voice like that, not even at her own father's funeral. Then the waiter slid the rent bill across the table. Her name was printed at the top, not mine. What else had she already planned to take from me tonight? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. The coffee smelled like comfort, but tasted like pity. The next morning, the house was too quiet for the day after Christmas. The garland still hung above the kitchen archway, limp and forgotten, like even it had lost its cheer. The faint scent of pine lingered, mixed with the unmistakable bitterness of burnt coffee. I poured myself a cup anyway. Old habits don't care much for new humiliations. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual. No laughter from the living room, no clink of plates being set out for breakfast. I sat at the kitchen table, still in the clothes from last night, and took a sip. It was lukewarm, under-sugared, tasted like someone made it out of obligation. I looked up, and there it was. The folder. It sat precisely where I'd left it last night, unopened, or so it seemed. But the angle was slightly different, not perfectly aligned with the corner of the table, like I always left it, just off enough to make my stomach twist. I reached for it slowly. The top page had a faint crease in the corner that hadn't been there before. I flipped through the first few documents, property tax statements, the deed, insurance policy copies. All there. But something about the air felt different, like the folder wasn't just a record anymore. It was a weapon someone had held in the dark. "Morning?" Amanda said flatly, walking into the kitchen. No eye contact, just breezed past me in her robe. Her tone wasn't angry, it was worse, dismissive. "Morning," I replied, forcing normalcy into my voice. She grabbed a yogurt from the fridge, popped it open, and started scrolling on her phone while standing. Didn't sit down, didn't ask about the night before. Just existed near me, like I was a tenant in her Airbnb. The silence dragged. I counted the beeps from the fridge door being left open too long. "Where's Michael?" I finally asked. "Out," said he needed air. That was a lie. Michael never needed air. He avoided tension like it was a fire alarm, ran when things got too loud or too quiet. I folded my hands over the folder and tapped my index finger once. "Did you touch this?" Amanda didn't look up. Why would I? A second passed before she added, "You always leave your stuff everywhere." There it was, small, sharp, not a knife, but a paper cut, enough to sting. "I gave you this folder last year," I said. "Remember?" She looked at me now, just for a second. "Yeah? And?" "And now I'm being asked to pay rent on a house I built." "Michael said you'd understand." I leaned back in my chair. That phrase, the passive weapon, Michael said. No one takes responsibility when they can delegate the knife. "I do understand," I said quietly. "Too well, actually." Amanda took her phone and walked out without another word. Her footsteps padded down the hallway, too calm for someone who'd shouted me out of my dignity 12 hours ago. The heater kicked on, but it didn't help. The house felt colder than the frost outside. I turned the folder slightly, aligning it back to its perfect corner. Habit, again. Control where I could. From the living room came the faint sound of a Christmas movie rerun playing. Some Hallmark romance, where families forgive each other by the third act. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. And I had no script to follow. The chair across from me was empty, Martha's chair. I used to pour her coffee first. She liked 2 sugars, 1 cream, and a sprinkle of cinnamon on top when the holidays rolled around. She would have spoken up last night. She wouldn't have let anyone talk to me like that. I rested my hand on the folder again, but didn't open it this time. Didn't need to. I knew every page, every number, every cent I had ever poured into this house. My legacy wasn't on some wall, it was in this paper, this ink, these sacrifices. The hallway creaked. A shadow passed behind the archway. "Dad?" Michael's voice. Quiet, hesitant. I didn't answer right away. He stepped into the kitchen, hair wet from a shower, already dressed like he was going somewhere important, somewhere I wasn't invited. His eyes darted to the folder, then back to me. "We'll talk tonight," he said, barely above a whisper. "About what?" I asked. He swallowed. "Just tonight." Another paper cut, small, quick, but deep. He left without eating. I sat alone at the table, staring at the folder again. No Christmas music played, no Mary in this house anymore. Just thin smiles and colder coffee. But I knew one thing: someone had opened that folder, and whoever it was, they weren't planning to give it back. The porch felt smaller when the neighbors passed without waving. I sat on the front porch that afternoon, coffee in hand, though it had long gone cold. The December air cut across my neck like a dull razor, but I stayed put. Sometimes silence hurts less when it's outside the house. The street was quiet, too quiet for the day after Christmas. A few plastic reindeer still stood guard on the Jones lawn, and the Hendersons' lights blinked half-heartedly in broad daylight. I could hear a wind chime from 2 houses down, its song clashing with the weight in my chest. I wasn't expecting company, so when I saw Mrs. Dalton walking her corgi past the mailbox, I gave her a slow nod. She didn't return it. Instead, she quickened her pace just enough to register. That told me everything. Word had gotten out. Not in full detail, not yet, but in a town like ours, you didn't need facts. Tone of voice and a well-placed sigh did the job. The screen door creaked open behind me. "Hey, Dad," Michael said, stepping out with a cautious look. I didn't move. "Hey." He leaned on the wooden pillar beside me. Didn't sit. Just hovered, like the moment itself was too uncomfortable to commit to. "About last night," he began. "Which part?" I asked. He hesitated. "Amanda didn't mean it that way." I turned to him slowly. She said, "Pay the rent or leave." That seems pretty clear to me. He scratched the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. "She's just stressed. You know, after everything this year." Stress. The magic excuse. The all-season justification for betrayal. I didn't speak. I just looked down at the deed folder on my lap, still sealed shut. I hadn't opened it since the morning. Didn't need to. I could feel its weight like a brick. "We talked," he said. "Amanda and I. And we think it's best if you start helping out with the mortgage. I mean, you're still living here." I blinked. "Once? You think I should pay rent on the house I built, that I signed over to you?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Just until we get back on our feet. Temporary." Temporary has a funny way of turning permanent. Michael looked toward the street, then back at the door. I caught it, that flicker of discomfort. Like he knew this wasn't just a casual ask, it was a line being drawn. I waited for him to say something that would erase the sting, but nothing came. "I gave you this house after your wedding," I said quietly. "Didn't ask for a dime, just wanted it to be home for your family." "I know, and we're grateful." "No, you're not." That stopped him. I stood slowly, the folder still in hand. "You're not grateful. You're calculating." He opened his mouth, but before words came, the neighbor from across the street, Mr. Keller, appeared on his lawn, bending to pick up a package. He looked over, nodded to me, then stopped, as if rethinking it, and went back inside without another glance. Michael noticed. His shoulders tensed. "They're starting to talk, aren't they?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Amanda wants me to pay rent. You're letting her decide that." "She's my wife, Dad. And I was your father long before that." He swallowed hard. "You're making this worse than it, Island." I stepped down from the porch. No, Michael, you are. The wind caught the edge of the folder and flipped the corner. I caught it before it opened. Some things weren't meant to spill yet. Amanda's voice cut through the air behind us. Lunch is ready. If he's eating. I turned slowly. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, her tone like an HR rep delivering a termination notice. I didn't move. I'm not hungry, I said. You sure? Because we're not going to keep cooking for 3. Michael flinched. Just a little. The folder pressed harder against my side. You said this was temporary, I reminded him. He looked away. Amanda didn't. You've had a good run, but this house has bills. You want to stay here, you contribute. I stepped closer to the steps. You're asking me to rent my own generosity. She smirked. You gifted it. Gifts come with no strings, right? Not no strings, I replied. Just expectations. A car drove by slowly, Mr. Levinson from the church. His eyes lingered on the porch. Saw me. Saw Amanda. Saw Michael frozen between us. Then he nodded. To me. Just me. Amanda noticed. Her arms dropped slightly. People are starting to ask questions, I said, turning back to Michael. They're confused. No, I corrected. They're watching, and they're remembering. Michael's voice dropped. You're blowing this up. Am I? I held up the folder. Or did you think I wouldn't notice it moved? Amanda went still. You opened it, I said. I know because I left a paperclip on page 3. It was gone this morning. Michael looked at her. She said nothing. That's theft, I said plainly. Not marriage stress, not miscommunication. Theft. The wind blew harder now. My coffee cup on the railing tipped and fell, shattering on the porch steps. None of us moved. And still, she didn't say sorry, just closed the door behind me. The bank clerk hesitated before sliding the document across. I sat across from the bank clerk, a young man in his 20s with hair too styled for a small town like ours. His name tag read Cody, but his eyes avoided mine like he didn't want to get involved. Small towns are like that, too polite to admit when they're witnessing a fire. I just need a copy of the last mortgage payment record, I said, voice calm, measured, everything tied to the property under Michael Rivers. He nodded and typed something, fingers gliding too quickly over the keyboard, like he wanted the moment to be over. While I waited, I looked down at the deed folder in my lap. Still intact, still mine in spirit, if not in ink. Its corners were soft now, from years of handling, but it still held weight, literal and otherwise. Cody cleared his throat. You sure you want to see this, sir? That told me everything. Slide it over, I said. He passed the paper with 2 fingers, like it was radioactive. I unfolded it carefully. Mortgage transaction, December 14. Payment made in full. Amount matched what I had set up years ago, except I had canceled that auto transfer months ago. And the account number? Not mine. The paper shook slightly in my hand. Where did this payment come from? I asked. Cody hesitated. It was processed under a joint family fund. Secondary user authorization. Whose name? Another pause. Michael's. And Amanda's. My mouth went dry. And the secondary user? He leaned in slightly, lowered his voice. Your name's still on it, but it looks like someone reactivated it. I looked at him. Without consent? Cody said nothing, but his silence screamed. I took a long breath, folded the paper slowly, and tucked it into the deed folder, like feeding a beast one more piece of meat before it roars. Can you print the authorization log? I asked. Cody shook his head. Not without a legal request. I nodded. Then I'll make one. He didn't meet my eyes again. Back in the truck, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, watching the cold fog up the windshield, breath slowly clouding the glass. My hands rested on the folder in the passenger seat. They didn't just want me out. They were laying the groundwork to make sure I couldn't come back. I thought of Martha, imagined her voice. Don't let them shame you in your own house, William. This wasn't shame. This was theft. I drove straight home, tires crunching the frost like brittle bones beneath me. The sun had started to dip. Christmas lights blinked dumbly along the rooftops, unaware they decorated a battleground now. When I walked in, Amanda was at the kitchen island, sipping tea like she hadn't ruined anything. Michael was beside her, laptop open, probably checking fantasy football scores. Nothing serious enough to explain betrayal. "Where's the folder?" she asked. I didn't answer, just walked past her and placed it on the table like a gavel. Michael closed the laptop. "Dad, what's this about?" "You tell me," I said, voice even, "because I just left the bank." Amanda stiffened. "You've been making payments," I said, using an account that had my name still linked. Michael glanced at Amanda. She shrugged. "It was just to stabilize things." "Without asking me?" I asked. Michael stood. "We didn't think you'd mind. It was for the house." "For my house." Amanda leaned forward. "It's our house now. You gave it to us." "I signed over the deed," I said, "not my consent to fraud." Michael's face tightened. "That's a strong word." "Not strong enough." I opened the folder, slid out the mortgage record. Let it speak for itself. Amanda looked at it, then at me. "This is just a bank form." "No," I said. "This is a signature away from prosecution." Michael raised his hands. "We weren't trying to steal anything. You're using my name, my records, to pay for a life that excludes me." Amanda fired back. "You were the one who stepped back, remember? You said this was our home." I stepped closer, voice dropping. "You made that clear the night you screamed at me to pay rent." Silence. Just the buzz of the fridge behind us. Then Amanda said it. The line that turned my bones to ice. "You should have expected this when you handed over everything." Killer line. That wasn't a gift, it was a setup. My fist clenched around the folder. Michael's voice cracked. "Dad, please, let's not turn this into a legal thing." I turned slowly. It already island. I took the document, folded it neatly, and slid it back into the folder. As I did, I noticed something tucked near the back. Page 7 had been flipped. It was the notarization form from last year's handover. And someone had scribbled something on the margin. Amanda's handwriting. A calculation. Mortgage projection over 5 years. Not notes for family planning, notes for financial takeover. I snapped the folder shut. "Where are you going?" Michael asked. "Out," I replied. "Before I say something I won't regret." Amanda scoffed. Always dramatic. I didn't respond. The folder was under my arm again, like armor. But now, I wasn't carrying documents, I was carrying proof. And they didn't know what I'd do with it next. The bank clerk hesitated before sliding the document across. I sat across from the bank clerk, a young man in his 20s with hair too styled for a small town like ours. His name tag read Cody, but his eyes avoided mine like he didn't want to get involved. Small towns are like that, too polite to admit when they're witnessing a fire. "I just need a copy of the last mortgage payment record," I said, voice calm, measured. "Everything tied to the property under Michael Rivers." He nodded and typed something, fingers gliding too quickly over the keyboard, like he wanted the moment to be over. While I waited, I looked down at the deed folder in my lap. Still intact, still mine in spirit, if not in ink. Its corners were soft now, from years of handling, but it still held weight, literal and otherwise. Cody cleared his throat. "You sure you want to see this, sir?" That told me everything. "Slide it over," I said. He passed the paper with 2 fingers, like it was radioactive. I unfolded it carefully. Mortgage transaction. December 14. Payment made in full. Amount matched what I had set up years ago, except I had canceled that auto transfer months ago. And the account number? Not mine. The paper shook slightly in my hand. "Where did this payment come from?" I asked. Cody hesitated. It was processed under a joint family fund. Secondary user authorization. Whose name? Another pause. Michael's and Amanda's. My mouth went dry. And the secondary user? He leaned in slightly, lowered his voice. Your name's still on it, but it looks like someone reactivated it. I looked at him. Without consent? Cody said nothing, but his silence screamed. I took a long breath, folded the paper slowly, and tucked it into the deed folder, like feeding a beast one more piece of meat before it roars. Can you print the authorization log? I asked. Cody shook his head. Not without a legal request. I nodded. Then I'll make one. He didn't meet my eyes again. Back in the truck, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, watching the cold fog up the windshield, breath slowly clouding the glass. My hands rested on the folder in the passenger seat. They didn't just want me out. They were laying the groundwork to make sure I couldn't come back. I thought of Martha, imagined her voice. Don't let them shame you in your own house, William. This wasn't shame. This was theft. I drove straight home, tires crunching the frost like brittle bones beneath me. The sun had started to dip. Christmas lights blinked dumbly along the rooftops. Unaware they decorated a battleground now. When I walked in, Amanda was at the kitchen island, sipping tea like she hadn't ruined anything. Michael was beside her, laptop open, probably checking fantasy football scores, nothing serious enough to explain betrayal. Where's the folder? She asked. I didn't answer, just walked past her and placed it on the table like a gavel. Michael closed the laptop. Dad, what's this about? You tell me, I said, voice even, because I just left the bank. Amanda stiffened. You've been making payments, I said, using an account that had my name still linked. Michael glanced at Amanda. She shrugged. It was just to stabilize things. Without asking me? I asked. Michael stood. We didn't think you'd mind. It was for the house. For my house. Amanda leaned forward. It's our house now. You gave it to us. I signed over the deed, I said. Not my consent to fraud. Michael's face tightened. That's a strong word. Not strong enough. I opened the folder, slid out the mortgage record. Let it speak for itself. Amanda looked at it, then at me. This is just a bank form. No, I said. This is a signature away from prosecution. Michael raised his hands. We weren't trying to steal anything. You're using my name, my records, to pay for a life that excludes me. Amanda fired back. You were the one who stepped back, remember? You said this was our home. I stepped closer, voice dropping. You made that clear the night you screamed at me to pay rent. Silence. Just the buzz of the fridge behind us. Then Amanda said it, the line that turned my bones to ice. You should have expected this when you handed over everything. Killer line. That wasn't a gift, it was a setup. My fist clenched around the folder. Michael's voice cracked. Dad, please, let's not turn this into a legal thing. I turned slowly. It already island. I took the document, folded it neatly, and slid it back into the folder. As I did, I noticed something tucked near the back. Page 7 had been flipped. It was the notarization form from last year's handover. And someone had scribbled something on the margin. Amanda's handwriting. A calculation. Mortgage projection over 5 years. Not notes for family planning, notes for financial takeover. I snapped the folder shut. Where are you going? Michael asked. Out, I replied. Before I say something I won't regret. Amanda scoffed. Always dramatic. I didn't respond. The folder was under my arm again, but now, I wasn't carrying documents, I was carrying proof, and they didn't know what I'd do with it next. The table was set for dinner, but felt like a witness stand. Dinner was already on the table when I came back. Roast chicken, creamed corn, That boxed mashed potato Amanda insisted on calling homemade. Martha would have laughed. She always insisted on real potatoes. But Martha wasn't here. Only her photo was framed and still sitting above the fireplace, exactly where I had left it after she passed. She watched the room now, as if she too had been invited to this trial. The deed folder lay on the table beside my plate. I hadn't put it there. Amanda did. Michael sat across from me, chewing too fast, eyes bouncing between his plate and the folder like he couldn't decide which one he hated more. "Glad you made it back in time," Amanda said, forcing a smile. "We didn't want to start without you." That was a lie. They'd already started. Forks were on plates, food half eaten. This wasn't a family meal. It was sentencing. I sat down slowly, keeping my hand on the folder. The room was warm, but I felt cold inside. Even the walls seemed to lean away from me. "Dad," Michael began, voice rehearsed, "we just want to talk. Civilly." "About?" He glanced at Amanda. She straightened. "We've been reviewing finances, and we think it's time to formalize things." Formalize? Yeah. Living arrangements. Responsibilities. Ownership clarity. My jaw tightened. Killer line. "You mean you want to bill me for the life I gave you?" Amanda didn't flinch. "It's not about that. It's about fairness." "To whom?" "To all of us," Michael said quickly. "Look, we appreciate what you've done, but things change." I nodded slowly, glancing up at Martha's photo. "They do." "We're not kicking you out," Amanda added. "We're just saying, if you're going to live here, help cover costs. Mortgage, utilities, groceries." I opened the folder in one swift motion, laid out the mortgage record, the bank statement, and a notarized copy of the property transfer. "You already used my name to cover costs." Michael leaned forward. "We didn't take anything. You accessed my accounts without asking." Amanda tried to soften her voice. "We thought you'd be okay with it. You've always helped." "This isn't help," I said. "It's hijack." Silence. Then Amanda reached under the table and pulled out a second envelope. "I printed out a breakdown," she said, sliding it toward me. "Just to make things clear, I didn't open it. Rent estimate. Utilities. Your share. My share. Of a house I built. Of a mortgage I paid off once and was now being manipulated back into. Of a home I gave up willingly for their future." I looked at the numbers. They weren't outrageous. That was the trick. They made it look reasonable, like I was being difficult for refusing. "This isn't about the money," I said. "It's about control." Amanda crossed her arms. "You've had control long enough." Michael looked up, startled. That was her slip. She hadn't meant to say it aloud. I stood, folder in hand. Amanda rose too. "We're not your tenants. And you're not the king of this castle anymore." I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I walked to the mantel, picked up Martha's photo, brought it back to the table, set it next to my plate. "This house," I said, "was built by two hands and one promise, mine and hers." Amanda scoffed. I looked to Michael. "And I gave it to you because I believed in you." He said nothing. "I didn't expect you to worship me," I continued, "just to respect the ground you're walking on." Amanda pushed her chair back. "We've had enough. Either you agree to this tonight, or you find somewhere else to go." Michael said nothing, and that silence told me what I needed to know. The loyalty shift was complete. He wouldn't stand for me. He wouldn't even stand beside me. He was sitting this one out, like he always did. I picked up Martha's photo. Then I looked down at the folder, my last symbol of presence in this house, and closed it gently. "I won't fight you," I said. Amanda blinked. "What?" "I won't scream, won't beg, won't even explain myself to the neighbors." "Then, what are you saying?" Michael asked, finally speaking again. "I'm saying I'll make it easy for you." I stepped away from the table, walked to my room. They didn't follow. Not yet. Inside, I didn't touch my clothes, just went straight for the suitcase, pulled it from the closet, laid it open on the bed, tucked the folder inside, slipped Martha's photo into the front pocket. The room was dim, the overhead bulb flickering slightly. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Down the hall, I heard them whispering. Amanda's voice sharp, Michael's weak. They thought I'd fight. They were ready for a tantrum. But they weren't ready for silence. They thought I would bend. Instead, I smiled and reached for my suitcase. The suitcase wheels echoed like a final goodbye. I didn't sleep that night, not a wink. Instead, I sat in the corner chair of the bedroom I once shared with Martha. Her photo rested on the nightstand, the only thing left unboxed. The suitcase sat by the door, already zipped, silent and heavy like it knew this wasn't just a trip. This was exile. At 6:03 a.m. I stood. The hallway outside was still dark, quiet. Amanda and Michael were likely still asleep, unaware or pretending to be. I turned once, looking at the bed where Martha used to hum hymns before sleep. Her voice would have cut through this silence like light through fog. The folder was in my hand. I didn't carry it under my arm. Now it was held tight to my chest, like a shield. It had changed, and so had I. No longer just proof, it was plan, it was power. I stepped into the hall, suitcase wheels creaking over the hardwood. Each rotation sounded louder than the last, a funeral drumbeat for something already dead. In the living room, I paused. The Christmas lights were still plugged in, blinking stupidly across the windowsill. Beneath the tree, Amanda had left presents, neatly stacked, none for me. That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was the envelope sitting on the hallway table. My name written on it. Her handwriting. I didn't pick it up. Some things are meant to stay unread. I moved to the front door, hand on the knob. Behind me, floorboards creaked. Amanda stood in the hallway, arms crossed, robe pulled tight. Her hair was messy, but her posture was perfect. Control always mattered to her. "You're really going through with this?" she asked. "I wasn't invited to stay. You were given a choice." I glanced down at the suitcase, then back at her. A choice framed as obedience is just control in costume. She stepped closer. Michael didn't want this. Michael didn't stop it. She didn't deny that. "You think this makes you noble?" she snapped. "Walking out like a martyr?" "No," I said. "Just free." Her eyes flicked to the folder in my hand. "You going to sue us?" "Not yet." "Then what's the folder for?" I stepped outside before answering. To remind myself that I'm not crazy. The door closed behind me with a final wooden thud. Outside, the sky was pale with the first breath of daylight. The street was empty almost. Across the road, Mrs. Dalton stood in her yard, pretending to adjust her wreath. She looked up, saw me, and paused. Her gaze dropped to the suitcase, then to the folder, then to me. And she nodded. It wasn't pity. It wasn't curiosity. It was understanding. The wheels of the suitcase clacked on the porch steps. Cold wind kissed the back of my neck as I opened the car door. I set the suitcase in the trunk, the folder in the passenger seat. As I slid behind the wheel, I allowed myself one glance back. No one came out. No apology. No second thought. Just that blinking string of Christmas lights mocking the season. I drove to the edge of town, past the grocery store where Martha and I used to get bagels every Saturday, past the hardware store where I bought the wood for the back deck I built with Michael when he was 17. I drove past history and stopped at a place with no memories at all. A motel, yellow siding, neon vacancy sign still buzzing. The room was plain, 2 lamps, beige carpet, bed that squeaked when I Saturday, but it was mine. I placed the suitcase beside the chair, and the folder on the desk. It sat there like a sleeping dog, waiting to be woken. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I sat by the window and watched the sun finish rising. watched as small-town life continued without me. Mid-morning, I walked down the street to the diner. It smelled of burnt toast and cheap coffee, like every diner in America should. The waitress smiled politely. Not kindly, just politely. "You new in town?" she asked. I paused, then nodded. Something like that. She poured me coffee without another word. I sat there for an hour, not reading, not thinking, just breathing. Then, back in the motel room, I finally opened the folder. Everything was still there. Deed copy, bank transaction, mortgage record, the scribbled notes Amanda had left in the margin, and now my handwritten list of names. A lawyer I once knew from church. A banker I trusted with my pension years ago. A retired detective I played cards with at the VFW. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was building something. The final page of the folder was blank. I placed it face up on the desk. Then, with a click of my pen, I wrote 3 words. Start the reversal. At dawn, I opened my laptop. Their mortgage payment was waiting for me to cancel. I opened the folder. Their entire life was funded by my name. The motel room was still. The heater hummed weakly in the corner, blowing warm air that never quite reached my feet. But I wasn't thinking about comfort anymore. I was thinking about precision. On the desk lay the folder, its pages now neatly organized into labeled stacks. Mortgage, insurance, utilities, joint accounts. It didn't just hold paper, it held leverage. At 6:31 a.m., I opened my laptop. The glow lit up the dull wallpaper behind the desk. I took a sip of motel coffee. Burnt, bitter, exactly what I needed. I began with the mortgage. My name was still tied to the account, not as owner, but as guarantor. Years ago, when Michael and Amanda's credit wasn't enough to secure the refinancing they wanted, I stepped in, signed the form, let them piggyback on my credibility. They forgot I kept the keys to that arrangement. I logged in, pulled up the payment portal. Autopay, active. I clicked, cancel. A confirmation message popped up. Are you sure you want to terminate automatic payments? Killer line. The click of the enter key felt like pulling a trigger. I clicked yes. The portal refreshed. Autopay, inactive. Step 1. Next, I moved to the car insurance. Amanda's name was listed as the primary driver on the family SUV registered under the shared policy I had paid for since they got married. They never noticed the renewal emails came to me. I logged in to the insurance dashboard, removed my name, removed their vehicle, closed the account entirely. Policy canceled. Step 2. Next, credit cards. Amanda was an authorized user on my personal account. I'd allowed it early on, back when she was pregnant with their first, and asked to use the card just for groceries. That card had been swiped for spa days, patio furniture, and Christmas gifts I never received. Not anymore. Remove authorized user. Amanda Rivers. I clicked done. Step 3. I sat back and stared at the screen. In 30 minutes, I had undone a decade of blind generosity. The motel room felt quieter now. Not lonely, just clean, like I'd vacuumed the ghosts out. I opened the folder again and flipped to the last section, monthly grocery transfers. A standing order I'd set up years ago, wiring $300 every first of the month to their joint checking. They never said thank you. They just assumed it was their due. I logged into my bank. Transfer. Canceled. I leaned back. For the first time in years, my bank account showed no pending obligations. No money trickling out like blood from 1,000 paper cuts. It belonged to me. All of it. I stood up, walked to the motel mirror, and looked at myself. Not with pity, with clarity. The man in the reflection wasn't old. He was sharpened. I turned back to the desk and picked up Martha's photo from the folder's inner sleeve. Her soft eyes smiled at me. The corners of the frame still held a smudge from her fingers, the kind that never washed off completely. "I'm fixing it," I said out loud. "Too late, maybe, but I'm fixing it." At noon, I walked down to the diner. The same waitress nodded. "Coffee?" I nodded back. She poured without another word. I sat in the corner booth with the folder next to me, like a briefcase. From across the diner, two men spoke in hushed tones about the Rivers situation. "Heard he left in the night. Mortgage bounced. Guy's old, but sharp. They didn't know I was there." That made it sweeter. Outside, frost clung to windshields. Life went on. But under the surface, under the polished driveway and fake wreaths, Michael and Amanda's castle was starting to sink. They just didn't know it yet. But they would. By tonight, the mortgage would fail its automated run. By tomorrow, the insurance lapse would be flagged at their job. By next week, creditors would start to call. And every paper trail would lead not to a missing payment, but to me. And my silence. I paid the bill in cash, walked back to the motel through brittle wind and brittle thoughts. Back inside, I opened the folder one last time and slid in today's receipts, cancellation, confirmations, printed logs, new account statements. It felt like building something again. Not a house this time. A wall. By nightfall, their phones would ring, their bills would bounce, and my silence would be deafening. They thought he'd go quietly, but his silence spoke louder than their threats. What do you think was his sharpest move so far? Comment below. Voicemail 17 was a scream. Voicemail 18 was a sob. By Wednesday, the motel phone began ringing. Not once or twice, but constantly. The first voicemail came at 7:12 a.m. "Dad, I don't know what you did, but the mortgage company called. Call me back, please." I didn't. I played it once, then deleted it. Voicemail 2 came an hour later. "I'm serious. This is affecting our credit. We're trying to fix it, but your name is still tied to everything. Just call us." It was Amanda's voice this time, tight, clipped, practiced. By voicemail 5, the tone had shifted. No more calm, just edges. "You're sabotaging us. Do you know how this looks to the bank?" I sat at the small motel table, the deed folder open before me. A fresh page added, handwritten log of every voicemail, every timestamp. Not because I wanted to track the chaos, but because I wanted to remember when the fear started showing. Outside, the parking lot was empty. A winter breeze rattled a loose shutter above my door. Inside, everything was still, predictable, uncluttered, unlike them. Voicemail 9 came after lunch. "Dad, please. The insurance is lapsed. We can't drive without risk. You didn't have to do this. This is your family." Michael's voice this time. Weaker than I remembered it. Killer line. "You didn't think about family when you turned my name into currency." By voicemail 12, Amanda was threatening. "You're going to regret this. You think you're clever? You won't get away with it. This can be reversed." I let that one play twice, just to hear the fear beneath the fire. The coffee from the diner still sat warm beside me. I hadn't eaten much that day, too focused, too sharp. I walked outside around 3 p.m. The air was crisp, wind biting against my cheeks. I took the folder with me, resting it against my arm like a sermon book. The town hadn't noticed yet, but the rumors had begun to drift like smoke. I stopped by the small post office. The clerk, Tina, offered a thin smile. "Heard you moved out." "Something like that," I said. She hesitated, then added, "Amanda came by Monday. Looked stressed." "That's so?" She asked if your forwarding address was public. "What'd you tell her?" Tina leaned in slightly. I said no, because it isn't. Right? I nodded. "That's right." She smiled wider. "Good." I left with a small bundle of mail bank notices, a dentist reminder, a Christmas card from the pastor's wife. She'd always liked Martha. Back at the motel, voicemail 16 was waiting. Michael again. They're saying we can't refinance, that the guarantor flagged the account. Did you do that? Dad, just talk to me. Talk? I had spoken. Just not in the language they expected. And then came voicemail 17. Amanda. Screaming. Something about an eviction freeze. Something about going too far. I deleted it. And then? Voicemail 18. Whisper soft. Nearly broken. Dad, I didn't know. I really didn't. He said you'd agreed to everything. He said it was handled. Please call me. Just talk to me once. Please. I sat very still. For the first time, I felt it not satisfaction, but something colder. A silence inside that wasn't peace. It was consequence. Amanda's voice had cracked. She didn't sound like a planner anymore. She sounded like someone standing in the rubble, unsure of what blew up. I didn't call her back. Instead, I picked up Martha's photo and looked at it for a long time. They're unraveling, I said. But I'm not done. That night, I walked to the diner again. Same waitress, same booth, same plain mug of burnt coffee. But this time, someone else noticed me. An older man at the corner table, Mr. Hill, retired fire captain, nodded once. William. I nodded back. He stood and walked over, sat without asking. Heard you're staying out by the blue spruce. Just a while. He paused. Then, don't let anyone take your name and shame it. We all saw what they did. We just didn't know the details. I didn't respond. He didn't need me to. He tapped the folder with 2 fingers. If that's what I think it is, keep it close. I do. As he stood, he added, Town's watching, William. More than you think. Back in the motel, I stared at the door. And then, knock. 3 short raps. I froze. I stood, slowly, placing the folder down with careful hands. I approached the peephole. At first, I saw nothing. Then, a figure. 2, actually. 1 short, 1 taller. Their breath fogged the glass. Amanda and Michael. Their faces pale under the flickering hallway bulb. Amanda's eyes swollen. Michael's jaw tight. Through the peephole, I saw them both looking more desperate than I'd ever seen. She followed me into the bank like a shadow. I didn't open the motel door that night. Let them stand there. Let the desperation frost their pride a little longer. Instead, I waited. And the next morning, I went to the bank. Not because I had business to handle, but because I knew the walls were made of glass, and sometimes truth needs windows. I stepped inside just after 9 a.m. The same young clerk, Cody, looked up from behind the counter, eyes flashing with quiet recognition. Mr. Rivers, he said, standing. I gave a small nod. I'd like to speak to your manager, privately. He nodded once and disappeared into the back. I didn't sit. I wanted to be seen. Through the bank's floor-to-ceiling windows, the morning light poured in, and beyond that, Main Street blinked to life. A few pedestrians passed. Some glanced in, some didn't. And then I saw her. Amanda. She was across the street, just outside the dry cleaners. Her hair was tied back. Hurried. No makeup. No performance. She spotted me through the glass. And she crossed. Her reflection hit the windows before she did. 2 versions of her walking toward me. One, the wife of my son. The other, the woman who tried to erase my name from my own legacy. The bell above the bank door jingled. Everyone looked up. She didn't flinch. Dad? She said too loudly. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Just stood there. Folder under my arm. A woman in the waiting chairs recognized her. Whispers passed between strangers. Amanda noticed. Her voice dropped. Please. Just 5 minutes. Cody reappeared from the hallway, a manager in tow. Conference room's ready, sir. I looked at Amanda. You want to talk? She nodded, eyes darting to the faces watching. Then let's talk where people listen. She followed me inside. The glass walls of the conference room didn't hide sound well. I wanted it that way. I placed the folder on the table, sat down. She didn't. Michael didn't come, she said. Then let's not waste this silence. Her shoulders dropped. We messed up, I know, but we didn't mean to hurt you like this. I opened the folder, pulled out the bank transaction printout, placed it between us. You authorized a payment under a joint account you never had legal access to. He said you gave consent years ago. Consent doesn't carry across crimes. Saturday. I believed him, she whispered. Killer line. Belief without truth is just loyalty dressed as blindness. She looked up at me, eyes glistening. Why are you doing this? I stared at her, not with anger but with clarity. You forged my signature. No, I didn't. I slid the next document across the table. Loan application, dated 3 weeks prior, co-signed using my name. Sloppy copy-paste job. Signature didn't even match the curves of my real one. Her hand trembled. This isn't mine, she said. No, I said calmly. It's his, but you filed it. I didn't. You drove it to the bank. I checked the security log. She froze. This building has cameras, Amanda. Everything's recorded. Through the glass, I saw 2 women whisper in the waiting area. One pointed toward us, the other covered her mouth. I didn't know what he was doing, Amanda said, voice cracking. I thought it was refinancing. I thought it was clean. And when you screamed at me to pay rent, what did you think that was? Her jaw worked, but no words came. I built that house, I said. Laid the foundation with my own hands. And you tried to sell it under me. A beat passed. Then she whispered, I didn't think you'd fight back. That was the honest part. That was the real Amanda. I stood, slowly, picked up the folder, slid the forged document back inside. She stood too. What happens now? She asked. I stepped past her toward the door and stopped. Now? I said. Now the truth starts speaking. I pushed the door open, and the room went quiet. Every head turned. Amanda followed, pale and silent. I walked through the lobby, toward the front. Outside, I stopped. Across the street, inside the coffee shop window, stood Michael. Watching. He didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't move, just stared. Amanda didn't see him until she stepped out behind me. When she did, she froze. He turned and walked away, without a word. As they left, his last words weren't a threat. They were a promise, and promises from desperate men are the most dangerous. Did Amanda know all along, or was she just another victim of Michael's game? Comment below with your theory, and stay tuned for the courtroom reckoning that's coming. Every stamp, every seal, felt like a bell tolling for justice. By Monday morning, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud. This was something quieter, sharper, like a blade that knows exactly where to cut. The folder sat beside me on the lawyer's desk. A pale blue mug steamed nearby, untouched. On the wall behind him hung certificates. Law school, bar association, local chamber of commerce. But I wasn't here for prestige. I was here for paperwork. I've reviewed everything, Mr. Templeton said, flipping through the final page. And I'll be blunt, this isn't just a family dispute. This borders on criminal misuse of identity. I said nothing. Just watched as he aligned the documents into a stack with surgical precision. Your name is still attached to several critical documents, he continued. Despite the transfer of property, they continued to use your credentials for financial gain. He looked up. And you want to file for eviction? Yes. Both of them? I nodded. He studied me. You're aware your daughter may claim emotional hardship? She's not the one crying, I replied. Killer line. I gave them a home, now I'm giving them a deadline. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a fresh folder. Eviction paperwork is straightforward, he said, but I'd recommend adding a cease and desist for further financial activity under your name. And a restraining order. He looked up. They threatened you? They showed up at my motel, I said. Uninvited, unrelenting. That was enough for him. He began typing. While he worked, I looked down at the document he'd printed. Plaintiff, William Rivers. Defendants, Michael Rivers and Amanda Rivers. My hands didn't shake. Signing that line felt like closing a chapter. By the time I finished, the seal was stamped, and the copy was slid into my own folder. The folder that had been growing like a living thing. Not just evidence anymore, strategy. Outside the law office, the winter air bit into my face. But it felt good. It felt earned. I crossed the street to the sheriff's department. The officer behind the counter was familiar Deputy Langston. We used to see each other every Christmas at the town parade. Mr. Rivers, he said, standing up. Heard a bit of what's going on. I placed the folder on the counter. This, I said, is the official version. He opened it. Eyebrows raised as he flipped through. You want us involved? He asked. Not yet, but you'll be serving the papers. He nodded slowly. You sure you want to do this? It'll go public. It already island. He glanced around. A woman in the corner was pretending not to listen. Langston lowered his voice. I've got your back. I'll make sure it's delivered directly. And the restraining order? Filed and time-stamped. They can't contact you now. Any call, any visit, you tell us. I nodded once. By the time I left, the weight in my chest felt different. Not lighter, but justified. Across the street, I saw Pastor Hale locking up the church office. He paused when he saw me, eyes narrowing. He crossed the street slowly. William. Pastor. He nodded to the folder under my arm. Rumors travel fast. I'm not here to clear them. I'm not here to judge. We stood there for a moment, traffic humming between us. Truth has a strange way of surviving, he said softly, even when silence tries to bury it. Then I'm done being silent. He placed a hand on my shoulder. They'll learn, William. Even prodigals find truth, but not always with an inheritance waiting. I offered a small smile. That part's already decided. That night, I sat in the motel again, folder open on the table. I added 3 new pages. Eviction, confirmation, restraining order receipt, court date notification. Each page went into its sleeve, each sleeve into its place. I looked at Martha's photo beside the lamp. She always said I was too soft on Michael. You were right, I told her. But softness doesn't mean weakness. The phone didn't ring that night. Not once. They must have known by now. The silence was proof. I sipped the last of the coffee. It was cold. Didn't matter. By the time I left, the papers were signed. Tomorrow, the sheriff would knock on their door. She stood at the gas station, card declined, mascara smeared. I saw Amanda first. It was 2 days after the sheriff served the eviction papers. I wasn't following her, didn't need to. Small towns do the work for you. I was just passing the gas station on 9th and Maynard, heading to the diner when I saw her at pump 3, one hand on her phone, the other jammed into her purse, like she could dig her way out of embarrassment. Then the card machine beeped. Loud. Final. She stared at the screen. Mascara smudged under both eyes. She looked around quickly, hoping no one had seen. I did. She didn't see me. She tried another card. Beep. Declined. The cashier inside stepped out onto the concrete, arms crossed. We're going to need you to settle that inside, ma'am. Amanda nodded stiffly, then pulled her phone to her ear. It was instinct. I turned my phone volume up. Michael, it didn't go through again. I need the backup. What do you mean it's frozen? What about Mom's line of credit? Michael? Michael? She paused. lowered the phone, turned, saw me. She froze. I gave a single nod. She didn't wave, didn't yell, just walked inside, hunched, folding into herself. Collapse doesn't happen with a bang. It happens in gestures. Back at the motel, I sat with the folder open. Now, it had grown to 3 inches thick. I had to add a rubber band to keep it from spilling. I inserted a new document. Bank email confirmation of account disconnection. I'd pulled my cosign from their joint credit union file. No more safety net. I flipped to the front page again. William Rivers versus Michael and Amanda Rivers. Funny how names become weapons when written under the right heading. Later that day, I stopped by the hardware store to get a new set of pliers. The cashier Jim looked up, then nodded. Heard you cleaned house. I didn't say anything, but I didn't have to. He leaned in slightly, voice lowered. They came in last week, trying to open a new business credit line. And? Declined. Not just because of credit. Town trust is thinner than it used to be. He handed me the receipt. As I walked out, a woman by the parking lot called my name. Mrs. Pickens, high school teacher. Knew Michael since he was in 9th grade. I just want to say, she said. People noticed. For years, we thought you were just tired. Now we know why. I nodded once. Thank you. She wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, the fallout spread in whispers and quiet nods. The man who had built a house was finally being seen as the one who also held it up for decades. At the diner, I overheard 2 construction workers talking at the counter. Amanda came to us for a quote. Said she needed to renovate after her father-in-law dumped them. Funny, the other said. He didn't dump them. He just let them swim on their own. The waitress caught my eye and topped off my coffee. On the house, Mr. Rivers. I didn't decline. That night, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't know it was this bad. I thought you were just being cold. I'm sorry. No name, no signature. I deleted it. Back at the motel, I added a new label to the folder. Community Impact. Inside, I placed printouts of articles, emails, financial notifications I'd acquired, each one a fingerprint of their unraveling. Martha's photo stayed tucked beside the zipper flap. I found myself touching its frame more often, now less out of grief, more out of purpose. I whispered to her before bed. They're not falling because I pushed them. I just stepped away. Killer line. Turns out, the weight they claimed to carry was always mine. The next morning, I passed the church steps and saw Pastor Hale speaking with a few board members. He saw me, walked down the stairs. You doing all right, William? Better than I have in years. He looked toward the direction of my old house. I drove past yesterday. The grass is dying. So are the lights. The place doesn't look the same. Neither do they, I said. He nodded, then asked, Are you going to press full charges? I'm pressing truth, I said. Whatever that leads to. He paused, then offered a firm handshake. You did right. Maybe late, but right. He walked away, but his words stayed. That night, I received another voicemail from Michael. Soft-spoken, desperate. Dad, she's not doing well. She's scared. I don't know what to do anymore. You were always the one who fixed things. Please, just call. I deleted it. No hesitation. Even the town had turned its back on them. I didn't have to say a word. My silence had already spoken for me. They didn't look at me like a customer. They looked at me like a headline. The bell above the door jingled as I walked into Marla's diner. Same scratchy welcome mat. Same plastic poinsettias taped to the windows, but the air felt different. It was quiet. Not because it was empty, but because I was no longer invisible. I'd been coming here for 20 years. Martha and I used to sit by the window booth 4. Every Saturday after grocery shopping. Every Christmas Eve morning. We'd split the blueberry pancakes and argue over whether to buy real candles or the fake electric ones. But today, everyone looked up when I stepped in, and they didn't look away. Marla herself came from behind the counter, wiped her hands on her apron, and offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Booth 4's open. I nodded, took my seat. A waitress, new girl, barely 20, came over with a fresh pot of coffee. "You don't have to order," she said. "We already know." And just like that, a plate of blueberry pancakes was set in front of me. Not on the menu anymore. Hadn't been for years. But they remembered. She leaned in, whispering, "You did the right thing. My dad said the town owes you more than we ever knew." I didn't respond. Just stirred cream into the coffee, slow and steady. From across the diner, I saw heads tilt in my direction. Not in pity, not in curiosity, but in recognition. Michael and Amanda had told everyone I was slowing down, that I needed help, that they were managing my affairs. Now those lies sat like burnt toast in their mouths. The door jingled again. In walked Sheriff Langston. No uniform, just jeans and a jacket. He spotted me, came over. "Mind if I sit a sec?" I gestured to the bench across from me. He didn't order, just leaned forward. "Served the restraining order yesterday." Michael didn't say much. Amanda cried. "She's good at that," I said. Langston tilted his head. "They're leaving town." That caught me. "Foreclosure notice came in this morning," he added. "Utility companies flagged them for unpaid balances. Credits shot. Can't stay." I said nothing. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a copy of the public foreclosure record. Town paper would print it next week. "They're leaving by Friday," Langston said. "Packed up 2 moving trucks." I looked down at the pancakes. Still warm. Still whole. "I just thought you should know," he said. I nodded once. Then Sheriff Langston stood. "People around here, we remember who builds and who takes." As he walked out, more heads turned. Conversations resumed, but slower, gentler, like people were rethinking what they thought they knew. A woman I barely recognized, probably someone from the school board, came over and placed a small white envelope on my table. Inside, a gift card, handwritten note. "You gave us this town. Now, let us give you something back." I didn't open it again, just tucked it inside the folder beside me. It was open to the community fallout section now. Printouts, notes, public notices, newspaper clippings. I took out a pen. Added today's date. 12/19, Marla's Diner. Public recognition. No shame left. I closed the folder. Let it rest on the table like a finished book. I ate slowly. Not because I was savoring the pancakes, but because no one rushed me. Marla came over again, this time holding something wrapped in brown paper. She unwrapped it carefully. An old coffee mug. Chipped handle? Blue trim? I blinked. It was Martha's. She had donated it during the local fundraiser 8 years ago. Somehow, Marla kept it. "I figured you should take it back," she said. "No one else ever used it anyway." I held the mug like it was porcelain gold. Killer line. Some inherit houses, others inherit dignity. The diner buzzed around me, but I sat still, mug in hand, folder at my side, and truth finally louder than their lies. That night, I walked back to the motel under the slow drift of snowflakes. I passed by their old house, dark windows, half a wreath still hanging. The tree, once glowing with light, now stood in shadows. And on the porch boxes, sealed, labeled, abandoned. I didn't stop walking, didn't knock, didn't gloat, just moved past it like it was someone else's life. Because it was. Back at the motel, I placed the mug next to Martha's photo. She smiled from behind the glass, eternal and unbothered. I whispered to her, They're leaving, but I'm still here. The house was empty now, but the diner remembered. And so did the town. And soon, the world would too. The letter opened with my name, but I hadn't written it. It arrived in a plain envelope, postmarked 2 days earlier. No return address. But the handwriting? Michael's. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity isn't a sin, it's how truth finds air. I slid a knife beneath the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Printer ink, a little faded, lines slightly crooked. It had been rushed, maybe printed from a library. The first line said, "I'm sorry." But that wasn't what caught me. At the bottom was my name, signed in bold. William Rivers. Only I hadn't written it. Killer line. Forgiveness begins with truth, not forgery. The signature was close, just like the one from the refinancing forms. But it wasn't mine. And now, it was public. Because attached to the letter was a copy of a letter to the editor, scheduled for Sunday's paper. He'd already sent it in. A confession. Michael had tried to apologize before, but this was different. This was exposure. This was legacy reclamation. In the letter, he admitted everything. The unauthorized use of my financial records, the forged signature on the joint account, the false claims about my mental health, the manipulation Amanda and he coordinated to gain control of the house, the community lies they spun for sympathy. And at the end, a line that nearly made me drop the page. If you ever thought my father was slipping, it's because I was holding the oil. He signed it William Rivers to make it look like I was forgiving him. He wanted control over the narrative again. Even in confession, he was trying to direct the spotlight. I leaned back in the motel chair, folder open beside me, pages spilling out now like feathers from a pillow slit too wide. I pulled out the earlier forged documents, laid them beside the new one. Same arc in the R. Same tilt in the Z's. But not mine. Still, it gave me exactly what I needed. Proof. Intent. Pattern. By noon, I was back at the law office. Mr. Templeton looked up, startled. Another round? I handed him the forged apology. I need this entered as evidence. He read it twice, then looked up. You want to push this? I want the paper to print the real version. He hesitated. You sure? I nodded. I've carried the weight of silence for years. He can carry the weight of truth. We typed it together. My real version. A letter to the editor signed by William Rivers. In person, in pen, in pride. The final paragraph read, "They thought taking my house would take my name, but names aren't built from brick. They're built from the quiet things, honesty, labor, sacrifice. I'm reclaiming mine." Mr. Templeton sent it to the paper before I even stood up. It would print side by side with Michael's. One true, one desperate. The contrast would be blinding. Outside, the frost had turned to sleet. I walked slowly, each step careful on the ice. I passed the local print shop. They'd already put the headlines on display. Local father stripped of home, rebuilds his dignity. Below it, a photo of me from last year's parade. I hadn't even known they'd taken it. Inside the shop, the owner came out and handed me a small copy of the article. "It's on us," he said. "People ought to know." That night, I placed the original forged apology letter in the folder. Then I slipped the mug Martha's into the front pocket alongside her photo. Everything had come full circle. The lies had been signed. Now, so had the truth. And it was my signature that would last. I called the motel front desk. "Checking out tomorrow?" I said. "Everything all right?" the clerk asked. "Everything's finally right," I replied. Their apology came with my name forged at the bottom, but my real signature is what the town chose to remember. Amanda wept before the judge. Michael wouldn't even raise his head. The courthouse smelled like old varnish and nerves. I sat at the plaintiff's table, Folder in front of me. Tidy. Complete. 3 inches thick with signatures, photos, bank statements, affidavits, and Martha's mug tucked between the final pages. Across the aisle, Michael shifted uncomfortably beside Amanda. His blazer wrinkled at the elbows, her eyes red-rimmed. Neither of them looked up. It was a bench, hearing no jury. Just Judge Collins, a man who once bought firewood from me in '98 and never stopped thanking me for giving him a discount. But today, there were no favors. Just facts. And the truth didn't need to shout. It had documentation. Mr. Templeton stood first. He walked through the timeline like it was a roadmap, step by step. The forged refinancing, the fake joint account setup, the forged apology letter sent in my name, the manipulation of my digital records, the emotional coercion in my own home. He presented everything with the calm of a man holding a sword sheathed in paperwork. Michael's lawyer, a pale, twitchy man from the city, tried to push back. Your Honor, this is a family dispute. My client was misled by outside advisors. He acted under financial stress. He's not a criminal. Judge Collins didn't flinch. Doesn't need to be criminal to be repugnant, he said. Then he turned to me. Mr. Rivers, do you have anything to say before I make a decision? I stood, held the folder at my side. Killer line. They used my name like a checkbook, then tried to sign it again as my apology. That wasn't protection, that was theft. I didn't cry, didn't shake, just sat back down and placed the folder in front of me one final time. The judge looked at Michael. Mr. Rivers, do you understand the damage you've caused? Michael didn't respond. Sir? The judge asked again. Amanda reached for his hand. He pulled away. She stood instead. Your Honor, we didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought he'd forgive us. I thought it was temporary. I didn't know it would fall apart like this. The judge sighed. Intent doesn't erase impact, Mrs. Rivers. And in this courtroom, impact writes the sentence. He reached for the gavel. Eviction stands. Restraining order remains in effect. Financial control is restored solely to Mr. William Rivers. Any attempts to use his name, signature, or records moving forward will be considered felony-level fraud. He paused. Then, looked at me again. Do you wish to pursue criminal charges? The courtroom stilled. Michael finally looked up. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Amanda just stared at me, eyes full of that same December panic from the Christmas morning blow-up. Everyone waited. Even Templeton didn't breathe. I stood once more. No. Gasps stirred in the small crowd seated behind us. The courtroom gallery had filled with townsfolk, press, neighbors, and even Pastor Hale seated quietly in the back. Why not? Judge Collins asked. I turned to Michael. To teach you something, son. Then to Amanda. And to leave you with something you can't steal, mercy. The judge nodded solemnly. Very well. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell, and everything shattered. Michael collapsed into the bench. Amanda sobbed openly. Outside the courthouse, a cold wind blew. The reporters didn't ask questions. The townspeople didn't speak. They simply stepped aside, letting me pass like a man no longer hidden under anyone's name. I walked to my truck, folder still tight in my arm, keys cold in my palm. At the corner, I heard someone call out, Mr. Rivers. It was the new school counselor, fresh from the city, didn't know the town politics yet. She held up a notepad. I read your letter in the paper. You said you forgave them? I said I wasn't pressing charges. Isn't that the same thing? I stopped, looked at her. No, I said. Forgiveness is free. Trust has a price. I left her standing there, words scribbled but incomplete. Back at the motel, I packed my things. I'd already arranged a rental small cottage near the lake. No one knew yet, just Templeton and the realtor. That night, I placed the folder on the motel bed one last time, then opened the last page. Inserted the stamped court copy of the ruling. Final section. Final proof. Justice wasn't loud. It was thorough. In the courtroom, they begged. But I didn't need revenge. I already had my name back. The house was gone, but the porch light was still on. 3 weeks later, I returned. Not to reclaim the house. That chapter was already closed. But to see the final fold in the story. The moving trucks were long gone. The driveway still bore the indentations of heavy tires. The curtains were pulled halfway in the upstairs window, Amanda's old room. The mailbox was empty, door hanging loose. The paint peeling like it had finally exhaled after years of pretending. I stood across the street. Same boots. Same flannel. Same folder in my hand, except this time, it was thin. Only one document remained. The rest had been filed, delivered, or burned. One copy of the eviction order, and the photo of Martha. I crossed the road slowly. The air had a bite to it. January's version of mercy. Neighbors peeked through blinds. One woman even stepped out and gave me a nod. Word had spread. Everyone knew what happened. I walked up the porch steps. The boards creaked. Less than I remembered. Michael must have replaced a few. But the welcome mat was gone. Just concrete now. And yet the porch light was still on. Burning low, faint yellow glow buzzing quietly above the doorway. Amanda must have forgotten to shut it off. I reached up, clicked it off. That was always my job. Martha used to ask me to leave it on when she went out late. In case I forget my key, she'd say, even though she never once did. Sometimes I think she wanted it on more for me than herself. I stepped back and looked at the house. Not with yearning, not with bitterness, just recognition. I built this. Brick by brick. Ridge beam to floor joist. This house didn't betray me. People did. And now, they were gone. I reached into the folder, pulled out the final eviction document, took a pin from my coat, and stuck it to the door, right above the handle, right below the deadbolt I had installed in 1992. It wasn't to threaten. It was to remind that names matter, that legacy matters. That silence isn't the same as surrender. As I turned to leave, I paused, reached into my coat pocket, pulled out Martha's mug, still chipped, still perfect. I placed it on the porch railing. No note, no plaque, no ceremony. Just the symbol of who had once lived here, who had built, who had given, and who had been erased, but not forgotten. Killer line. They took the house, but I took back the story. Down the street, the pastor stood on his porch. He raised a hand. I raised mine back. No words, just peace. That afternoon, I drove to the cottage. It was smaller, quieter. But when I walked inside, everything felt right. I placed the folder in the drawer, and I placed Martha's photo on the windowsill, angled just right to catch the morning Sunday. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man trying to defend the past. I felt like someone starting again with dignity. The town had spoken, not in loud headlines or parades, but in respect. In coffee shop nods. In children waving as I passed. In the way the bank teller greeted me with Mr. Rivers and not Mike's father. I was no longer a supporting character in my own story. I was the name on the deed. The real signature. The final fold. The mug on the railing. The eviction paper pinned like a flag of quiet justice. And the porch light turned off not in anger, but in peace. If you stayed through the end, tell me this. What would you have done if your own children tried to erase your name? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Until next time.